I just came from the sea, and trust me, you don't know what I did see. It was Moby Hawk. He was coming out here. It's the Seattle Seahawks today. 12th man. I guess I'm the 13th man today. Woo! I'm ready to go. I hope you guys are doing well and having a cooling day. Seattle Seahawks, let's dive into this roster and get into the nitty-gritties and what does this team need to improve? Offensive line. Anyway, free agency strategy, we'll talk about all that and get into a 7-round mock draft. Let's start with the tackle room, and what I've alluded to with this offense line being such a big issue, availability has been a big problem on this right side. Abraham Lucas is a solid tackle. I mean, he's not an elite tackle, but he's not a bad tackle either. If you told me that he's going to play at least just 14 games even, and George Fant's under contract as well, I would be fine with that. I wouldn't have any problems with this. I wouldn't say it's a first, second round type of need. I mean, you need to draft somebody still to get some more depth on this line, no doubt about it, but I wouldn't be as worried about it. And that's really what is strugglesome for me in determining how big of a need is this truly. Obviously, you got your franchise left tackle in Charles Cross. Now, I do think PFF numbers are a little infantile. Like, I've watched all the games here, and I think Charles Cross is a really, really solid tackle. He does get beat at times, and they have to pass the ball a lot too. So that's also one of the reasons he's going and dealing with so much pass protection throughout the season that makes it a little bit more challenging. But he's a really good tackle that has the potential to be a elite tackle down the line and continue to get better and better. And he has gotten better and better. So at least you have a bookend left tackle. I feel really good about Charles Cross. It just comes down to those injuries on that right side. And I don't know if it's worth letting go of George Fant. I'm not saying, again, he's a great starter or anything like that, but he's a good backup to have. Unfortunately, he got injured too, which made this even more challenging. Stone Forsythe had to fill in, and that was not good. So it's really, really tough and how you're going to approach this. But my view on it is that you're hoping that Abraham Lucas, George Fant, at least one of those guys can stay somewhat healthy. They've had such bad luck at this right tackle position that it's tough. You probably still want to bring in somebody, and that's why I'm saying you got to bring somebody in the draft, free agency, to at least add more depth into the room. Go on to the interior, which to me, this is the area that they have to upgrade from. Like, if you're just talking like what areas need to be improved upon, this interior offensive line needs help. And one of the reasons why they haven't been able to establish a good run game, and you got good running backs, that's what's so frustrating, they don't have much push. And I believe statistically wise, I think they're like 28th in terms of play where the running back gets hit before the line or whatever. So they're not good. And in running efficiency, they're on the bottom 5 in the NFL. It's not. And it's just, you can watch any game from Seattle, or at least most games, 95% of the games, and their rushing ability is just, it's really rough to watch. So improving this interior, getting some more push on this interior offensive line is a top priority for me. And pass protecting too has not been great for this interior offensive line. So all things together, they need help on this interior, whether it's a guard, center. I think it's both. Okay. I mean, let's just be frank. It's both. They need to improve in both, areas here, starting with Leighton Tomlinson, who has been solid. He's been a rock for them, at least been available, which is something you can't say about a lot of this offensive line. But Tomlinson, I give him that. He's going to earn that extra $2 million of incentive, I believe, by playing this week versus the Rams. So good on him for that. He's definitely earned it by playing and everything like that. I'm not saying he's an elite guard, but at least the availability has been there for him. He is a free agent. I don't expect him to be back. Maybe they do give him a contract once again. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. And then you got center Olusegun Oluwatimi. Now, here's where it gets very interesting as well, because Olusegun Oluwatimi, he's not a terrible player, okay? I don't want to say that he is, unplayable or anything like that. He is a startable center in the NFL. He has limitations. He's not the quickest guy. Don't expect him to get to the second level and make those run blocks and do all those sort of things. He's not that guy, okay? And this is something where I just say you need to kind of upgrade from, in my opinion. Olusegun Oluwatimi, solid player that you want to keep on your roster. He's a great backup and at least compete. But I would love to add somebody in here who can really help out this offensive line, add some more road grading ability, and just help them out in general. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. You can certainly try to find an upgrade between free agency and the draft for sure. Anthony Bradford, he's been a little banged up, ended up on IR. You got Satoa Luamea from Utah, 6th-round pick. He's a nice run blocker, but he really struggles in pass protection. You got Christian Haynes, their 3rd-round pick from UConn. I still believe in him, and I would love to see them play him this week at left guard or even right guard, whatever. Just let him start, man. I want to see what you got more of Christian Haynes. You might as well at this point in the season. He certainly, though, is somebody that I view as a real high chance to be a starter for this team down the line. So we'll see how it works out with Charles Haynes. No matter what, though, I'm adding one guard, I'm adding a center. Like, you need to add both guys, at least competition at center, and then a starter at the guard position. Let's go on to the tight end room now. And Noah Fant, he's a solid player. I don't think he's an elite tight end or anything like that. He's not a great blocker, but he's a solid receiver. He's made some nice plays throughout the entirety of this season. I do think they may have a cap situation is he worth the $13 million cap hit? You can save $9 million range by letting him go. So that's going to be something where A.J. Barner has really stepped up. Their draft pick there from Michigan, he looks good. And he's been reliable too as a blocker. And as a receiver, he's got solid hands. So I think he ends up being the starter next season. And then you just kind of find a number 2 backup tight end and find some depth maybe in the draft late in, especially in this draft class. I think there's some good tight ends you can find late in the draft. So that's kind of where I'm approaching this going into the offseason. Noah Fant, not a bad player, but is he worth that contract? That's where I have a little struggle a bit. You got Pharaoh Brown. I don't know if they re-sign him. Brady Russell, I expect him to be back. Maybe Tyler Mayberry as well. But anyway, I would just say you go with A.J. Barner. Let him be the starter going into year number 2 and what he's been able to develop into this season. And then find a veteran backup and maybe a draft pick late as some more depth as a blocker. This wide receiving core now. And you got Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and DK Metcalf. Now, Lockett's had a bit of a down year. He is going into a tough situation as well. I love Tyler Lockett, man. And he is the epitome of a football player, man. And what he means for this team is just, you can't, it's priceless, right? As MasterCard would say. So trying to rework that deal, to me, is a huge priority for this team. You cannot, the $30 million cap hit has to come down. So if you can try to get with Tyler Lockett, that would be the ideal scenario. Keep him, keep your legends. That's what you need to do, in my opinion. But in terms of areas to look at, I still think this is a draft need, but I think it's more of a mid, especially if you bring back Tyler Lockett. I think it's a mid-round pick to late mid, somewhere early day 3. That's kind of what I'm looking at this. They still need to invest in it, find that 4th receiver. I mean, Jake Bobo is a good, tough, gritty blocker. So you keep him around, of course. You get a little bit of depth there with Young. So that's kind of my view on this wide receiving core. I would even look to extend DK Metcalf. I know some people will say trade DK Metcalf. This really depends, right? If you're saying Geno Smith, we're going to keep him, we're going to roll, we're going, this is win now mode, then you probably try to extend DK Metcalf to lower his cap number because they're going to have to look at doing that as well since their cap situation is a little tricky. But that's really the only thing that I can say. If you're saying to yourself, look, we don't feel confident in Geno Smith going forward, we might want to tear this thing apart, well, not tear this thing apart, but do a little bit of a rebuild or a little bit of a reset, then you might think about trading DK Metcalf. So that's kind of what it comes down to there. But Metcalf's still a really good receiver, man. And I think you just extend him, keep him around. He's a cornerstone player. Obviously, Jackson Smith-Njigba, what he's done this season has been phenomenal. He's their number 1 at this point. Go on to the running back room. I'm going to keep this short and simple. It's really good. And I know the efficiency numbers haven't been there, but Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker have been phenomenal. And I know Walker's been a little banged up, but he just breaks tackles like a machine. Maybe you could add a little bit more in terms of receiving role, but Zach Charbonnet is not bad in that department. You got Kenny McIntosh as that 3rd guy. Overall, this is not a big need for me, especially with other glaring holes on this roster. You got a formidable 1-2 punch, and then Kenny McIntosh is that 3rd guy. Let's go on to the quarterback position now, and this is where it is really, really tough because Geno Smith now will be entering into the last year of his contract. Do I really feel confident about paying Geno Smith and extending it? If you're talking $50+ million for Geno Smith, then I can't do it. I can't. I really can't. So that is where this scenario becomes so challenging. If you want to extend him for one more season for like a $35 million, $40 million range and to lower his cap number this next season, then okay, I guess I can get on board with that, especially in this quarterback class. You might not say, oh, there's a guy I feel great about. Or if you're somebody who want to develop for like 2 seasons, that would make sense. But Geno Smith just really has not been able to elevate this team, in my opinion. He's a good player, don't get me wrong. He's a good quarterback, and I certainly think he is a solid starter in the NFL, and especially you have weapons and you can improve this offensive line, then you might give Geno Smith more time to throw the football. So I also understand that it's not all on Geno Smith, and Ryan Grubb too needs to shoulder some of that as well. I think that, it's not been great so far in his first year as the OC. So those are all question marks in my opinion. And that's why I say you keep Geno Smith as your starter. I wouldn't move on from him. He's still a good football player, but I would definitely be looking at drafting to develop somebody here to at least add some competition in this room. I'm not sold on Sam Howell personally, but maybe they're higher on him than I am, and we'll see how that all works out. But I do think this is a draft type of need on day 2, early day 3, to be able to develop somebody behind Geno Smith. Let's go on to the defensive line and start off with the interior of the defensive line now. And Big Cat Williams, how did he not get a Pro Bowl selection? You're kidding me. Unbelievable. This guy's a stud. He's one of the best interior players in the NFL. He has been dominant. You turn on any Seattle game this season, and you're going to notice number 99 Big Cat out there, wrecking machine. He is literally a force there. And as a Jets fan, why did we let him go? Unbelievable. We could use him right next to a big Q. That would be fun. Hey, trade him back. I'll take him. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And then you got Jaron Reed, who's had a nice season this year. I'd look to extend him. He is a free agent, okay? And I don't think he'd be super expensive to bring back, maybe like $6 to $8 million range. He's certainly earned it. He's had a good season for them. And then you got Jonathan Hankins as your nose tackle. I think they end up moving on from him, and you want to try to find a little bit more help there in terms of a nose tackle, big body. That's going to be the only thing that I would say you need to do. And obviously Byron Murphy, he's looked like a first-round pick. I think especially in limited reps, he's looked solid. I wouldn't say he's looked insane or anything like that just yet, but I'm really excited about Byron Murphy. So between Murphy, keeping Reed, Williams, I would go ahead and let go of Roy Robertson Harris. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but for the $6.6 million that you can save, there's no dead cap on that either. I would just do that. Roll with, hopefully Mike Morris can step up and be that fourth guy in terms of that rotation. You got Cameron Young who can play a little inside out as well. But I think overall they're pretty good at defensive end and as pass rushers on that front. Just finding another big guy. Let's go on to the edge room here. And I think they've got a really solid edge room. They don't have a number one guy, but they've got some really solid players. I mean, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall has really stepped up this season. Uchenna Nwosu's a really good football player. Obviously what he means to this team, Walter Payton Man of the Year for them. He is a really good dude on and off the field, and that means a lot, of course, and that's why I lean towards not letting him go, and I would certainly rather let go of Draymond Jones, save some money there. He's a $21 million hit. I just haven't seen enough play from him to feel good about keeping him for that type of number. If they want to renegotiate or figure something out, then that's fine, but I would say you go ahead and move on from Draymond Jones. If you're going to keep somebody, you keep Uchenna Nwosu. That's what I would do. Between Mafe, Hall, Nwosu, you still need that fourth guy and somebody to develop there, but for sure, just in case of injuries, etc. So I think this is still possibly a first-round need, depending on BPA, of course. I think offensive line is still the number one priority. However, depending on the board and how things go, you certainly could look at that. I just think it's probably a day 2 type of selection, getting somebody in there to be that fourth guy, to be that developmental piece, to add some more pass rush into the room is certainly something I'm going to be looking at for this team. Going on to this linebacking room now, I think priority 1, re-sign Ernest Jones. And then after that, just find some depth because Tyrese Knight has been really good. UTEP, man, 4th round selection. They found a steal, man. They really did. He's got good speed. He's got ability to cover too, man. I like his instincts. So between him and Jones, that's a really good 1-2 punch. Just keep those guys around. I think you got a really good linebacking core for Mike McDonald and his scheme. And Aiden riding dirty, see me rolling. Well, you got to talk about Aiden dirty as well, but I think he's done a solid job, especially as the season's gone along. This defense has gotten better and better, and then part of that, Ernest Jones coming along, Tyrese Knight's coming along in the second half of the season. So between these two guys, I would just say you find a little bit more depth. Josh Rosh can come back on the cheap, Drake Thomas, Patrick O'Connell. But besides that, I think you need to add maybe another guy into the room. It's not a huge priority, but I would certainly add maybe somebody else, a veteran or something like that, to be that 3rd, 4th guy. Overall, they're looking pretty good at this linebacking core as long as you re-sign Ernest Jones. Moving on to the secondary, though, and this gets a little interesting because Reek Wallen, really good coverage player, terrible tackler in the open field, and it's a liability at times. Obviously, just the hustle and the motor, too, at times has not been there with Reek Wallen. Once again, good coverage player. Can you get a little bit more? Can he get a little bit more of that fire that he had in his rookie season? That's what I want to see more out of Reek Wallen, because if you have Reek Wallen at high level rookie season, Reek Wallen playing his butt off, and Devin Witherspoon, you're jiving, man. I'm thriving with that. I think that's a really good 1-2 punch in the cornerback room. And then maybe if you start even playing Witherspoon more on the outside, I don't know. I really like him in the slot. I think you keep him there, what he's able to bring. He's invaluable as a blitzer and as a run defender. He's phenomenal. One of the best in the NFL for sure. Josh Jobe has been a bit of a liability in my eyes on the outside. I'm not saying, he's horrible. You certainly could do worse at the cornerback position. Trey Brown, same thing. I don't know. I just don't know if they're going to re-sign Trey Brown. Josh Jobe, you can bring back on the cheap. He's a restricted, so he'll be back. and whatnot. But I do think they're going to need to add somebody else, whether it's a free agent signing, the draft. You do have Nehemiah Pritchard. You spent like, what, a 4th-round pick on last season, 4th, 5th round. I believe it was a 4th-rounder. So you have Pritchard. I like Nehemiah Pritchard actually coming out Auburn. He has the versatility inside and out. So somebody that can play in the slot a little bit. If you want to play Witherspoon a little more on the outside next season, then he certainly could take a little bit of that role as a dime cornerback. So Pritchett certainly adds some more depth in the room and see what he can develop into. And that's why maybe I lean towards more the veteran free agency route, especially with the youth that they have, and then going that route rather than drafting somebody. I'm not saying, though, if BPA comes on the board, if Benjamin Morrison's sitting on the board, I would go ahead and take him. But in general, I think the secondary is okay. If you can just get a little bit more out of Reek Woolen, man, let's go, Reek. Come on, you're going to the contract year, so maybe you're going to get the best out of him. And then finally finishing off the secondary with the safeties and Julian Love, Kobe Bryant, one of the best 1-2 punch safety. Honestly, it's a bit of a shocking surprise element, I guess, with Kobe Bryant stepping up at safety and playing so well. The dude was making plays all, that back end of the season. They should have been starting him from the get-go, man. Rashawn Jenkins took more of a backseat role. I think they move on from him, save a little bit of money there. Kayvon Wallace, I would try to bring him back. I think he's a good, solid depth player and a good special teamer. So I would still look at finding like a 4th safety in the draft, 3rd, 4th safety to develop there, just in case they can't pay Kobe Bryant in 2026. So overall, though, I think they're really good to go in terms of their starters. Kobe Bryant, Julian Love, those two guys in the back end are phenomenal. So you're good to go in terms of your starters. Maybe just finding a little bit more depth in there and competing for the future are definitely a possibility for this team. Let's go on to the team cuts here, and we're going to have to make quite a few, starting with Tyler Lockett, the legend, the myth. He is a stud on and off the field, what he means to this team. We may not be done with that, though. We may try to renegotiate a little bit better. So I'm gonna leave that for right now because, I can't do it. Personally, I can't let go of Tyler Lockett. So more to come on Tyler Lockett in a minute. But for right now, we're going to save $26.89 million, 8.95, whatever it is. Anyway, too many 0.6658 B dot. No, I sound like a robot now. Anyway, Draymond Jones, I'm going to go ahead and just straight cut. You could post June 1st this, and that way you can spread out more of the money, and it would help out in that regard. But I want to get the money right now, so that way I can use that in free agency. So I take a little bit more of the dead cap. However, it helps us right now. Noah Fant, I'm going to let go. I feel like AJ Barner stepping up. We're good to go there, and we can find some more depth between free agency and the draft. Rashawn Jenkins, I'm going to go let him go, save a little over $5 million. And then finally, Roy Robertson Harris. There's no dead cap there. It's just going to save $6.6 million to get us in at least a decent spot here. 54 and some change $million to deal to spend on re-signs and whatnot. But I'm not done yet. I'm going to restructure / extend DK Metcalf. And this is one where some people will say trade him. Some people will say extend him. I'm personally extending him because I do still think he's a really good receiver. He's played tough. He's played through injuries, and I love that. He's a gladiator out there, and he's so difficult to cover. And it's one of those guys where it's like, yeah, I got to know where DK Metcalf is out there, and it makes everybody's life easier. So between him and Jackson Smith and Jigba out in the field and trying to keep Tyler Lockett here in a minute, that is what I'm looking to do. Give him a little extension, restructure some money, or give him a bonus. Sometimes it's way weird the way it works, but we're going to save around $11 million. It's just kind of a guesstimate and think how things will work and what that extension could look like and the new money that he's going to get. And that does get us to over $65 million. And then going on to the team signs here. I'm not bringing anybody back on the offense here, just, where it is. But we do have a budget for $10 million for practice squad guys, restricted dudes that I'll have listed on here. There's some dudes, that are going to be re-signed and fill out the rest of the roster. So that's where that extra budget comes in leeway if I'm a little short on contracts, if, just estimates, because a lot of these are estimates. So I like to keep that as a little bit of a feather too. And then on the defense side of the ball, Jaron Reed, I want to bring him back, $7.5 million 1-year deal. He's been really, really solid this season. I think he's definitely worth coming back on a veteran deal that he, it's more than just a veteran minimum or anything like that. But he's earned it. He really has. And he'll keep that interior rocking. He also can play a little bit as that big nose as well. He has a versatility to play inside out for that team as a 3-tech, 1-tech, you name it. He definitely can do it on that defensive line. You got Ernest Jones giving him a 3-year, $45 million deal. I know it's a big one, $15 million average, puts him in line for like 4th, 5th highest safety or linebacker in the NFL, but I do think he's worth it, man, and have a combination of him and Knight I think would be really, really good going into next season for Mike McDonald. And then Josh Jobe, get him back. He is a restricted, and I do want to list him. He might get a little bit over that. They could give him the tender as well. I don't know. It depends on how much he's going to get, if he's going to really acquire a whole ton in the open market, and that's why I think $2 million is fair. And then Kayvon Wallace adds some more depth and special team. Keep him around on that $1.5 million deal. Then going on to the actual free agent signings here, starting with Tyler Lockett. This is more of a re-sign, but a rework deal. I know Fletcher Cox did a similar thing too, but I think this would be a really good. I mean, I'm just not letting go of Tyler Lockett, man. No way. You keep your legends, you keep your studs. Lockett, 1 year, $8 million, reworked the deal. And depending on what it is, maybe it's a little bit more with incentives. I'd be okay with that too. Maybe give him like $5 million of incentives. Do something like that, but keep him around as much as you can. I mean, he's a legend. And then Drew Dahlman. This is where it gets a little interesting. Our one big sign here, Drew Dahlman. I know he's had some issues in pass pro at times, and his snapping this season hasn't been perfect. But what he brings to the table, and he is not a bad pass protector either. He's really come a long way with that too. He's been solid for the Atlanta Falcons in that regard. And what he brings to the table as a run blocker too is going to give this team another element. You talk about Ryan Grubb saying he wants to run the ball more, wants to run. You got to actually run the ball, man. And it starts with having some good offensive linemen to be able to run behind. I understand that. And that is where I'm going. Drew Dahlman, one of the better run blocker centers in the NFL. You get him into this line. Alusagunul will team. I'm not saying you just cut him or anything like that. He's going to be a great rotational player and whatnot. Maybe even competes at guard. He's probably more of a center-only guy. Anyway, I just feel like Drew Dahlman would be a huge upgrade for this team and this offensive line, what he brings to the table. And then you got Kylan Grenson, 1 year, $2 million, looking for a prove-it deal for the Seattle Seahawks. Good receiving tight end. Okay, so you lose Noah Fant, you get a cheaper option with Kylan Grenson. I think you can get some solid production out of him. TJ Slayton on the defense side of the ball, good, solid, big interior defensive lineman, add a little bit of depth on that interior with Cameron Young on the front and Jaron Reed. And then Brandon Stevens, obviously with some experience and know-how with Mike McDonald, so I think it's a nice little option for him. He's coming off a bit of a down year at Baltimore, so he's looking for a little 1 year prove-it deal, $4 million range. Help them out in the secondary, add somebody with that experience and know-how in his scheme, and get another guy on that outside to go along with Reek Woolen and Witherspoon. And obviously Josh Jobe can work in as your rotation of 4 with Nehemiah Pritchett. And then finally, we do budget in that $7 to $9 million. I personally put $8 million towards this number and counting in all these. So just over the cap here, or just in a good spot there. Anyway, we're in a solid position going into the draft financially now. Speaking of the draft, before we get right into it, let's highlight the needs once more here real quick. Offensive line, still a need. Guard, top priority here. I'm going to be looking at it early in the draft. It's still the number one priority in my eyes for this football team, even after free agency. But at least we had in a really good center in Drew Dahlman, and you got Christian Haynes lined up as one of your starters. Bradford and Luamea will be competing there for right now. However, again, we're not done yet. We're going to add for sure. And then I do think we'll add a tackle. Absolutely do. Get some more competition in the room. Wide receiver, I'll look at a mid-round pick. Going to add some more depth there. Maybe tight end as well late in the draft. That's like a late UDFA, late, 7th round type of pick or something like that, because you got Grenson, you got Barner. Maybe you just need that 3rd, 4th guy. Quarterback. I will be looking at drafting a quarterback. That's going to be something I look at maybe day 2, early day 3, to be able to find a developmental guy behind Geno Smith, at least for a season, get some more competition in there. Running back, good to go. Offensively wise, I think edge rusher is one of the top priorities here that I'm going to be looking to add between round 1, round 2, round 3. So it's an early-ish need. I think you need to find that 4th guy for right now between Nwosu, Mafe, and Hall. So I will be looking at another edge rusher. I'll be looking at another like a big interior defensive lineman. Overall, I think cornerback looks pretty good. I think safety looks good. Maybe find some more depth at the safety position late in the draft. Same thing with linebacker. See if they can find some depth late in the draft /UDFA. It's draft time, and shocker, we're going offensive line. Tyler Booker, the big monster from Alabama, the left guard there. He's going to be a plug-and-play left guard for this team. And yes, you can say, well, it's a little bit of a reach selecting a guard at 18 overall. But look, in this draft class, I think when you're getting to 18, you're going to be looking at a lot of guys who have late 1st round, early 2nd round type grades. And that's really where I have Tyler Booker. And so in terms of value, I think this is fine for Tyler Booker. He's a mean mugging dude on that front for Alabama. He's strong. He's got vice grips hands. He is monstrous, man. And he's not the quickest guy, but he can, do what you need him to do. Okay. I think his foot speed is a little bit on the slower side. However, he gets the job done and certainly is a solid pass protector, and he has been for Alabama this season. He's really improved in that regard as well. So you're adding a really good run blocker with Drew Dahlman next to him. Obviously, we'll see what we can. Now we have a competition between Bradford, Luamea, and Haynes as your 3rd guard. I feel way better about this in general. On to our 2nd round pick, Landon Jackson, the big monster edge rusher from Arkansas. He's going to be a guy. I love the fit here, especially since we lost Landon Jackson. If you're looking for somebody that can play a little inside out, especially since we did have to let go of Roy Robertson Harrison as well, I think Landon Jackson is a perfect addition for this team. Can play a little bit of 3-4 base defensive end. Can play a little outside edge rusher. He has experience doing both there at Arkansas, and he certainly has the size profile to do both. So he's going to be another guy you add into that defensive line, be a fourth edge rusher for this team behind a Chinna Nwosu, Derek Hall, and Boye Mafe, and then also give you some more depth as a situational pass rusher on the inside. So I just think what he brings to the table is exactly what they are missing now at this point with where I went after free agency and letting go of players and stuff like that. So just getting some more depth off the edge and on that defensive line. On to round number 3, Carson Beck, Georgia quarterback. You believe it. I'm going with a quarterback here. Carson Beck, really good developmental option here, round number 3. Yeah, he's had a down season, but the tools are there with Carson Beck. 6'4", 210 plus pounds. He has the size. He's got the prototypical arm talent. Not an elite arm, but a solid arm. He knows how to work the middle of the field, and he knows how to work with anticipation. The problem with Carson Beck, is he an elite athlete? No. Is he going to make these high-level, Patrick Mahomes plays? No. That's something, the out-of-structure stuff that hasn't really been there for Carson Beck. And the accuracy is really taken a fall this season, in my opinion. And that's something, hopefully, maybe just, he lost his weapons. He lost Brock Bowers. When you lose Brock Bowers, it's always tough. So I do have to understand. I get that. But I do want to see him be able to develop, which is perfect. He doesn't have to start right away. He can come in here, develop behind Geno Smith, see what you have after a season. Then you can kind of go from there with this quarterback situation. On to round number 4, Torrey Horton. A guy that's been a little banged up this season for Colorado State, but the talent is there. And I think somebody could really get a steal on Torrey Horton. He brings that vertical speed, man. He is a good outside guy. I mean, can be used inside out. They use him inside and out. They actually used him a lot on drags, just utilize his speed, whatnot. But on the next level, I think he's going to be a really, really nice vertical threat. Knows how to track the football too really, really well. And I think is a nice understudy for Tyler Lockett. I mean, different players, but I think he can do some of those type of things for this team, can be a field stretcher type for this offense. Add that number 4 wide receiver to go along with Jake Bobo in their depth at the wide receiving position. On to round number 5. I'm taking a nice developmental tackle here, Alabama A&M, Carson Vincent. And I've not watched him, so I'll be honest, I do not know. I have not personal experience with this guy. I can't wait to see him at the Senior Bowl. I've heard he's got really nice NFL traits, arm length, size, and athleticism, like all that is there. He's just a bit of a developmental project by the sounds of it, hands and stuff like that, cleaning all that up. NFL competition level, at Alabama A&M, certainly going to be in question, and that's why we need to see him at the Senior Bowl before, we start moving him up and down the board. But I can't wait to see what he brings to the table, and as a developmental tackle, I think it makes a ton of sense here to add some more depth into the room. On to our first 6th-round pick, Dante Trader, Maryland safety. Get some more depth into the room. This is just, he's going to be a great special teamer. He is a heat-seeking missile. He loves to hit dudes, and I love that. He's going to be a great special teamer early on, as I'm mentioning, and you can develop him. And who knows, maybe he can be a guy in a season or two that could compete for snaps and be a starter. You never know. So, especially for injuries and whatnot. On to our next 6th-round pick, I'm going Nazir Stackhouse. Just adding another big dude on that interior defensive line. Obviously, we added in TJ Slayton from the Packers. And you got Cameron Young still. We'll see if he gets healthy, and then we can, rotate him in and out as well. But adding another big fella in there on that interior that can be a nice nose, one-shade guy, Nazir Stackhouse, can hold the point of attack. He's strong, big, and physical. Just not really much of a pass rusher. Hey, he can make interceptions, though. For the final pick of the draft, there could be a multiple options. We could go linebacker here, could go corner, but I just went ahead and take another tight end here, CJ Dupree from Alabama. Could be a good blocker. That's really what he is. He's not really the most athletic guy. He's not going to add a whole ton in the receiving game, but we got Grenson, you got Barner. So just trying to add that third blocking tight end to give you some more depth in the tight end room to finish this all out. To recap everything up, talk about coaching real quick. I think the only change that I would be willing to make would be Ryan Grubb. That's going to be something we have to talk about. Do you move on from him? And remember, he's coming from college at Washington. It's an adjustment. So heading to year number 2, I would hate to give up on him this soon. I'm a little worried, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm ready to hit the code red yet and just fire him straight up. So that's why I would say you probably keep him. You want to make sure you have a backup plan just in case going into next season. However, I would probably lean towards keeping him, that continuity going into year number 2 for him, and hopefully getting better and being more balanced. I think that's got to be the goal. And that starts with being good with your offensive line, which John Snyder, speaking of him, I mean, he's got to hit on the offensive line this offseason. I think that, to me, if he doesn't hit on the offensive line, then next season, you might look at a coach or a GM change as well. But that's something I still keep Snyder as your GM. And obviously Mike McDonald, keep him in riding dirty, Aiden riding dirty as your defensive coordinator. So overall, Ryan Grubb would be the only one that I would consider moving on from. I know a lot of Seahawks fans will probably say move on, but he is going in, change from Washington to the NFL. It is a difference. And as he goes into year number 2, we improve this offensive line. I think that is where it needs to go. And then you kind of figure it out from there. And now talking about the roster in general and what we were able to do, offensive line. Oh, did we get offensive line? Yes. Now the tackle, I could talk about that right tackle position. Still interesting. Okay, I know I'm messing with fire here with Abraham Lucas, George fan, but my hope is that at least one of those guys can stay healthy for this team. We obviously add in a developmental guy with Carson Vincent. I'm not saying he starts right away or anything like that. He's a left tackle anyway for Alabama A&M, so he would have to develop over a right tackle. But we add in some depth to the tackle position, and just between Fant and Abraham Lucas, I just don't know what else to do. It's so challenging. It's like, do I cut George Fant? Do we draft a tackle first, second round? Those are all on the table for me, but for right now, like I'm rocking with this room, and I wanted to really focus my attention on improving this interior of the offense line. At least get a good run game, because if you get a really good run game, it can limit them having to pass the ball so much. So we add in Tyler Booker, Drew Dahlman, both fantastic run blockers and solid pass protectors. Okay, I'm not saying it's a huge strength, but with those guys, you're going to run the rock, okay? You are going to force yourself to run the rock because those guys are going to open up lanes for Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So that's really what was my vision for this team in general, was getting some mean mugging run blockers on this offensive line. I think we did that. And you got an open competition at that right guard position between Bradford, Luamea, and Haynes. I think Haynes could end up winning that job with second season and whatnot. Tight end just adds some depth in there. Wide receiver, you had a nice 4th, 5th option with Jake Bobo. Torrey Horton with his speed can be a really good understudy for Tyler Lockett. Keep Tyler Lockett though if you can on that rework deal. And then quarterback-wise, we had a developmental guy with Carson Beck to be able to develop for a season behind Geno Smith. And then you can decide what you want to do. If you want to give an extension for this next year after Geno Smith, then you could do that, just depending on how things go and whatnot. And then on to the defense side of the ball, where we added some more edge depth here with Landon Jackson going to be that big monster presence to fill in for Draymond Jones, give you another edge rusher who also can work a little bit inside and out. Remember, since we did end up having to lose out on Draymond Jones, plus we ended up having to lose out on Roy Robertson Harris, I think Landon Jackson give you a little bit of best of both worlds. Can get you a little bit more edge talent, plus get you a little bit of work inside and out. So I like what he brings to the table for this team and this defensive line, the way Mike McDonald will be able to use him on that defensive line. Get your 4th guy off the edge to go along with Mafe, Hall, and then obviously Uchenna Nwosu getting back healthy will be huge too for them off the edge. And then on the interior of the defense line, we added TJ Slayton to be a nice big guy on the interior. Nazir Stackhouse in the draft. Cameron Young, we'll see if he can get going this next season, going to year number 3 for him. So you added some more depth there. Obviously, you got some studs on that interior with the big cat. You bring back Jaron Reed, and heading to year number 2 with Byron Murphy. Cornerback-wise, we didn't do anything in terms of the draft, but we added in Brandon Stevens with that know-how of him and Mike McDonald. I think that makes a lot of sense, getting somebody in there on the outside. And talk about Tyreek with Reek Woolen going into that contract mirror. Maybe there'll be a little more fire this season. Get that secondary elite. And then just some depth at safety. Linebacker, I would just say you add in a veteran, whatnot, and then also they could do something UDFA-wise to get a little bit more depth as well at that linebacking position. We just weren't able to get it. I went after tight end at the end there. Overall, I feel like they're in a good position in terms of starters. Maybe finding a little bit of depth could certainly be in the cards here. Anyway, that's going to do it here for the Seattle Seahawks. Let me know what you think, agree or disagree. What would you do differently for the Seattle team? Any coaching changes that you would make? It's always going to be interesting for this 12th man team, but I really, man, it's tough. It really is. I thought they were going to make the playoffs this season. Just a little bit unfortunate stretch there with that Minnesota, Green Bay one, a couple tough losses. Anyway, hope you guys have a really cool day. My name's C-Sling. I'm doing my thing. I'll talk to you later.